This is the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast, where we spread awareness for men's mental health and spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. Be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify. New episodes drop weekly. Welcome back to the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast. If you're new here, I'm your host, Steve, and our platform is to raise awareness for mental health and to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. This is a special episode for me today, and I didn't tell him this before we came online, but if you know me and know my journey, I got sober on October 15th of 2021. That was the last day I had a drink. I saw Nick online a few months later, saw him on podcast, and I saw that he had a book, and I'll hold it up one more time. It's called Objective Secure. So I purchased this book in early 22. It helped me develop a morning routine to be more aware of my emotional health, my mental health, and to be more accountable as a husband at that time and as a father, because I have 2 children. So Nick, it's very special for me today, and it's an honor to sit down with the author of the book and also a man who's probably one of the most resilient men to ever walk the face of this earth. So thank you for joining the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast today, brother.
Hey, brother. I appreciate it, Steve. I've been looking forward to this one for a while, and you're right. I was not expecting that. I didn't know that was a part of your journey. I did know that you became sober at some point within the last 3 or 4 years. But it's humbling, and I appreciate that kind of feedback. I won't go off too far off on a tangent, man. I imagine this will come out organically, but just since you put me on the spot, man, it's as someone who spent almost 20 years now in special operations and the GWAT era, the SOCOM community has kind of been highlighted quite a bit, and you got different personalities and characters that are doing different things because of that, right, wrong, or indifferent, live your life. But the idea of writing a book is something that I never thought I would do. If it wasn't for COVID and a whole lot of other kind of random ironies that kind of aligned, I almost certainly never would have. But I will tell you, man, that I really struggled with doing that. Am I violating this code of anonymity that we kind of signed up for, knowingly or unknowingly, that we just live in the shadows forever? And if you put anything out there publicly, you're like violating this code, which I get. In fact, I respect it, really. I think that's an important, thing to be aware of. And so I only share that because I wrote the book, wrote the manuscript, did the whole thing, got the approval from the DOD, did the whole thing. It took over a year for that whole process to happen. And I'm telling you, bro, I was literally on my Amazon account, everything uploaded, everything done, ready to click the publish button, and I couldn't do it. And I sat there for like an hour. And I remember I went and talked to Tony, my wife, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. She's like, you just spent over a year writing this thing and approvals and command this and that. And I was like, I don't. So my point, man, is I struggled to put that out there. It's something I still battle with today a bit. I use that as a gift to help kind of keep me in line and recognize that, I do come from a community that I hold in really high regard, that I owe a lot to. So it helps me kind of decide on when to hit post, when to not, what goes out there as a reference. Long-winded way of saying, when I get feedback like that from you, man, not only does it validate and verify that it was the quote right thing to do, but that makes it all worth it, man, right there. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and just to add to this real quick, so I didn't have this podcast, obviously, when I bought the book, and I have a separate Instagram page for my business. And I actually reached out to you and just said, thank you. And you responded to me, man. So it's from the reader's perspective, it's cool to be able to engage with an author, especially you got to remember when I bought the book, dude, I never read books. I was like, that's stupid. Like I didn't read, not your book, but I just didn't read. I'd go to the gym, I'd go for long runs, and I just never really took the time to work on my mental health. So when I got serious about it, it was cool to be able to engage, just to get the feedback from you, because you obviously wrote the book. So no, man, I'm grateful. I really am. I really appreciate you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, man. Well, Nick, so normally on the show, I like to start from the beginning. Obviously, most of our viewers and listeners already know who you are and know your story, but I want to kind of start from the beginning. I think we all know where you're from your accent, but can you kind of start us, what childhood looked like for Nick, and kind of work us through, school. And I know you played sports. Can you kind of cover your time playing sports and all that good stuff?
Yeah, man. One of the things I enjoy talking about kind of my upbringing is, today's social media driven world, bro, you see these like polished and filtered snapshots of an individual who's likely trying to market or message or like do something for some reason. And there can be this massive misconception that's created around this one image that you see. And a lot of times when it comes to me, there's this massive misconception that I've kind of like always been this way, whether that's resilience or toughness or disciplined or structured or goal oriented and like like hyper confident and just like getting after it like every day and all these things, which I understand, which is why I love the chance to kind of dismantle that belief system because it's completely and totally inaccurate. Man, I grew up in and around the Boston area, Massachusetts. I grew up a small, scared, insecure kid. People hear that and the first word small, they're like, that doesn't make any sense. Like you're 6'6", like 250. Like it's like, yeah, I know where I'm at now in life, but I was this tiny little peanut. I was picked on. I was bullied on most days. Both my parents, they had me and my youngest sister really young. So they struggled, financially and they were in the grind as 20 and 22-year-olds to keep roof over our head and keep food on the table, which they did. But there came some struggles with that. So I moved around a lot. I was in a new spot literally every year up until eventually I got to college. I was a new kid in school,
Wow.
in a new location. Socially, that was really hard. By some instance, if I were to like make a friend, I was off to the next place the next year and just repeat that process. So in today's world, bullying is kind of taken a little bit more seriously than it was back then. Back then it was just kind of part of being a kid
Mm-hmm.
and, get back out there and kind of figure it out. So, but what I like to highlight, man, is, my parents, again, had me super young, but I've had these conversations with them since. And I'm like, did you have this incredible foresight with your approach to the mentorship you gave me? And their answer was no, we had no idea what we were doing. We were just trying to figure it out like most parents do, especially when you have kids that young, kids having
Yeah.
kids. But my point, man, is what they didn't do was put me in this hyper protective bubble of protection and just kept me there. What they did was I'd come home beat up physically or emotionally in tears. They'd give me some guidance. They'd give me some recommendations, and then they'd send me right back out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
And like that is the process of conditioning. It's exposure to discomfort, exposure to stress and pressure, and then recovering from that. And you do it again and again and again, whether it's physical endurance, mental endurance, emotional endurance, or resilience. That's how it's built. And so I got a lot of reps at that from the time I was like 4 years old, all the way up until I was, a late teenager, early, young adult. And so I give my parents and my upbringing, albeit really hard at the time, so much credit that enabled me to do some of the things that I pursued and was able to do later in life that required an enormous degree of mental toughness and resilience because that's a skill, man. And there's only one way to learn a skill, and that's by getting in the reps. You got to get in the reps. And so I was getting those reps in from the time I was a very young person to all my time into the military, and I'm just grateful for it.
Yeah, it's hard, man, as a kid when you move around a lot, and I'm glad you shared that because I feel like maybe in today's society, you see more helicopter parents, and they want to swoop in, and if the kid's bullied, and I have 2 kids of my own, but like I'm an '80s kid, so I was born in '79, so I can relate to the bullying side, and it teaches you how to. I think it builds confidence because you have to learn how to defend yourself, and I know for me, sports is where I was able to kind of gain that respect, and then the bullying would stop because I played on high school teams. So for me, that was an outlet. That was a way to prove myself. Almost like you go through the bullying as the crucible, then you get on a team, and it's like, okay, this guy's on a team. I'm not going to pick on him anymore. At least for me, that's how it was.
Yeah, sports for me was kind of my anchor because
Uh-huh.
no matter where I lived, I was in a new town or a new district or new whatever, like there were sports programs. And so my parents, again, being amazing, would put me into those programs, which gave me something to focus my attention on that was productive. I didn't have the same kind of effect of, oh, I'm on the football team playing Pee Wee football, so no one's going to pick on me anymore. That really didn't happen with me, but athletics and kind of my physical capability did become something that I focused heavily on as a young person. And that's really what got me into like fitness and like weightlifting and things like that. I'm like, who doesn't get picked on? Well, the Incredible Hulk doesn't get picked on. right? Like
Yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger doesn't get picked on.
Yeah.
Professional football players, but it was all based on the physical, appearance and
Mm-hmm.
capability. So this idea was, I'm just going to turn my body into an absolute weapon
Mm-hmm.
and create this armor around myself to protect my emotional well-being. That's what drove me really into athletics, into fitness, and in health. And it did eventually kind of give me that outlet. It did, unfortunately for me, I went kind of too far in the other direction and started making some not so great decisions later in life. Once my body did develop and I was that physical weapon, I started to wield it in some really horrible directions. But yeah, athletics, sports, fitness, that became kind of a focal point. It was at least a healthy outlet for me at the time.
What about, growing up, was church and religion, was that a part of, your family's tradition at all?
It was. So I'm half Irish, half Italian. Both sides of my family, hyper Catholic. So
Okay.
I grew up in Catholicism, hated it, bro. Like sit, kneel, stand, sing. It just
Yeah.
like Sundays for me growing up was for football and for church. That
Yeah.
was it. And
Yeah.
the first part of the day, church, I just loathed it and couldn't wait to get to the football part of the day, And
Right,
so
right.
I did grow up in that environment. Both my grandparents are still very Catholic, and a lot of my extended family are very Catholic. I moved away from that as fast as I possibly could, although I didn't get very far because based on my athletic pursuits, I went to a private high school in Dorchester. That's a Jesuit school, all boys Jesuit, which
Okay.
is like hyper Catholic. So I'm in
Yeah.
high school. Now we're studying scripture and we have
Yep.
to go to mass as part of our operating system as students. So now I'm like back in that world again. Couldn't wait to get out. Did the bare minimum to pass really across my academic career in general, but specific to religion. So I did grow up in it.
Okay.
I know we're going to continue to talk about faith, so I don't want to get too far ahead.
No, you're
I
good.
did grow up with it. I couldn't stand it. I got away with it as fast as I could. The first time I was able to truly kind of break away was once I went to college, and that I was kind of free, or at least in my mind I was at the time. It really wasn't until I joined the military that came back around and
Okay.
then eventually just took off.
Where did you go to college in the Boston area also?
I went to college up in Lowell. I went to UMass.
Oh, okay, that's right, that's right.
Yep.
Nice. Well, so so you go to college and, I read your book. A lot of people already know your story, but I want you to share it with us. What led you to the Army? Like, why the Army out of all the branches? And if I remember correctly, and quote me if I'm wrong, I feel like that four-letter word was thrown around early in your life, SEAL, because that seems to come up a lot. When that Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. So I'm just
100%.
curious. I'm just curious, why the Army? Like, why that
100%.
branch?
I want to take an extra second here and answer this in a way that I don't know if I've shared on a public platform. This has been some recent reflection that I've gained through some prayer and some analysis, because the reason why I wanted to join the military was largely fueled by 9/11. I was a 19-year-old college football player, watched it happen, was really pissed, and wanted to be part of our response. That's been my stereotypical answer to the question, why did you decide to join the military or the Army or whatever? And while that is true, what I can tell you, and this kind of relates to what I was just saying about on that physical spectrum of development, wanting to create this capability so no one would mess with me. And then later in life, particularly when I got into college, I started to fill out and I was actually able to do these things in combat sport, boxing, wrestling, martial arts, weightlifting. Like I created this like physical dominant entity, and I took that into some pretty horrible directions. And I was doing some work for some people that I'm not so proud of as I look back on these, on my life. The reason why I share that context, man, is because I don't think I knew it consciously at the time, but I am firm in my position that it was a subconscious component to my desire to serve in the military outside of 9/11, was I felt like I had this like, like, like debt to pay society based on the amount of pain that I had inflicted on people. Like I had a penance that was owed. And I'm going to take this capability that I've been wielding into some pretty horrible directions for the last 3, 4 or so years. I'm going to put that into a place of positivity, of positive returns that is in service to my country. And if that costs me my life, then I might deserve that. And I'm okay with that. Why the Army? Good question. I did want to be a SEAL. Like I knew I wanted to go into special operations and that was it. My career was not intended to be a career. I wanted to get in, get to the tip of the spear, kick some ass, and then get out and figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life. That was the game plan. Cool. Who's at the tip of the spear? Navy SEALs. Comes to mind for a lot of us real quick. Not so ironically, they are brilliant with their marketing and their messaging. So it's done very strategically.
Oh
I got
yeah.
a lot of SEAL buddies. I'm not your typical, Green Beret who's going to just like talk shit about all of them all the
Yeah.
time. Although
Yeah.
we do have a very typical kind of brotherly relationship where we do talk shit about each other. We compete,
Right.
but then you put us in the same environment on the same team and we dominate as a unit. But I did want to be a SEAL because I wanted to be like the baddest dude
Mm-hmm.
ever, So I walked into a recruiter station in downtown Boston, and in the same building, they had the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the Army. And I went in that order. So I walked right into the Navy office. I'm like, I want to be a SEAL. He's like, perfect. Well, we got to get you into the Navy first, and then you can request to go to Buds and do that whole thing. I was like, okay, cool, thanks. And I left. I went to the Marine Corps office, got the same answer from that guy, left, went to the Army office, and I got a different answer. And the Army recruiter was like, hey, we got this program called 18 X-ray Special Forces Recruit. It gives you the chance to bypass any kind of conventional Army service. You go straight into the SF pipeline, take you about a year and a half or so, give or take, and then you become a Green Beret as your first job. I was like, well, that's interesting. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't really know much about what Green Berets did.
Mm-hmm.
John Rambo and, movies and John Wayne, like I didn't
John
have
Wayne,
much
yeah.
to go off of. So I didn't make my decision then. I went home. I did some research. I'm like, what do Green Berets do? Unconventional warfare. Oh, that sounds kind of sexy. Like, what does that even mean?
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately decided to go that route. So I went the Army route because the X-ray program, one, it gave me the fastest route to get into active service in special ops. But then I was also really drawn to the mission set of the Army Special Forces. Unconventional warfare, albeit a very sexy term when you kind of unpack it,
Mm-hmm.
that to me was interesting. So I was interested in the mission and I was interested in the speed in which I could do it.
Did you graduate college or did you get out early to go into the military?
I did graduate. I did
Okay.
consider getting out early, like right after 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, I did stay in. I did grind out my degree, and then I came in after.
Well, here's my next question then. What made you decide to go enlisted and not go in as an officer?
Yeah, I love this question. There's two answers, man. One is the 18 X-ray option is not an
Yeah.
option for officers. So if you want to
Right.
be an officer, you got to go into the Army, you got to serve some time, conventional, and then you can drop a packet and then come over.
Mm-hmm.
So that automatically almost made it a non-option for me. But the second part of the answer was, and this is somewhat accurate, although not entirely. Back then, for me, I didn't grow up in a military family, like nothing. So I really had not a lot to go off of.
Yeah.
Officers were the guys behind desks telling other people what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the enlisted guys were the guys that were going to do the thing. And again, that's not totally accurate. There are definitely officers that will get their hands dirty and do things as part of their function or part of their personality or character or like whatever. So that's not totally true. That was just my interpretation of it at the time. And I didn't want to be a dude behind a desk. I wanted to be the guy out doing the thing. So I wanted to do the work of an enlisted guy
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to do it as fast as possible. Boom, there you go.
Yeah, and the reason I ask you is I think a lot of people don't realize how different it is to join as an officer, at least coming out of college and going OCS route. I know the Army's a little different than the Navy, but then trying to go into special operations, it's way different on the enlisted side than the O side. And I don't think a lot of people realize that because Navy, I joined the Navy, I went OCS and then went to Buds, but most of those dudes were coming from Annapolis. And hearing you talk about the 18 X-ray program, since I've been in the Navy, that makes way more sense, man, to just say, okay, I've got a clear path. I know exactly where I'm going versus, oh, no, just join the Navy. Then maybe we'll give you a shot at Buds and then you're on a boat somewhere. Yeah, I totally, that totally makes sense. But I was just curious, man, because I knew a lot of guys that were enlisted that had college degrees. And so I was just curious. My father was a warrant officer for his career, and he encouraged my brother and I both. He said, I'm not telling you what to do, but I recommend joining as an officer just because he saw it from a different light. So yeah, I was just curious what your take was on that.
It is kind of ironic that eventually I did transition to become a warrant officer.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the Army, warrant officer, it's its own rank structure.
Mhm.
It's one that even a lot of soldiers like don't even know what Army warrant officers do, and even less know what Special Forces warrant officers do because
Right.
we're like a unicorn of a unicorn that like
Mhm.
no one gets, which is part of one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to do it. But again, my point is I came in, I want to be an enlisted guy. I want to be a worker, part of like the backbone of the force. And all those things are absolutely true. And I got a chance to do that. Officer to me was like, yeah, I'm good. I don't want anything to do with that. And then eventually I was like, this is kind of a cool option. Maybe I'll go this route, which I did. And I look back and I have no regrets.
Nice, nice. Well, I want to walk you back a sec and just whatever you're comfortable sharing. I like how you shared what what drew you to joining the military. You said because you felt like you kind of needed to do it outside of 9/11. That's my generation too, so I understand that perspective. Can you share or shed some light on maybe some of the stuff you were involved with that made you feel that conviction, like, hey, if I do need to go do something greater than myself because of my behaviors. Now, I don't want to put you on the spot and make you share anything you're not comfortable with, but I'm curious, if you would like to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'll stick to the periphery, man.
Okay. No worries.
Boston is a interesting town.
Hmm.
It's certainly evolved over the years, but when I was up there, especially as a young person, and there are of course elements to this day, although things have changed in a lot of different areas of the city. But like most major cities, you've got crime that happens all over the place every day. And then you've got organized crime that happens in some places at a greater scale than others. Boston's got a history of that, going back between, the Italians and the Irish and some of the Russians. And I'm leaving some groups out, I'm sure. But that was just part of the Boston culture as I grew up in the 80s. It was just
Hmm.
like normal. And you stayed away from those areas and you stayed away from those areas. And like, I got it. And so I was enticed and I was excited about living in the fast lane and
Hmm.
how I could provide value into some of those worlds, and got caught up in it. And I was on a road that had two different destinations. One was jail,
Hmm.
or more like prison, and the other was death. And that's how things were going to end. And for a minute there, I was like, this is the lifestyle. It
Hmm.
was sexy and fun and unique and inspired by movies and all this other bullshit, that you can justify being a pretty horrible person because of the lifestyle.
Hmm.
But eventually, thankfully, I was able to get some insights that this is where things were going to go. And the military became the outlet to get me on a better path.
So you were pretty self-aware at that point to realize that and not go down that dark road, that dark path instead of
Eventually, some self awareness came in.
yeah, but
It took a minute, but it did
yeah.
hit me after some really obvious catalyst points that made it undeniable on the trajectory that I was on. And I was right there on the fringe, man. I was right on the cusp of of wrecking my entire life or flat out ending it. And so it took me getting to the precipice to have that awakening and that self awareness. And again, I'm grateful, of course, that I was able to finally get it.
So were your parents pretty stoked when you decided to join the army then because of maybe that other road you could have gone down?
It's a good question. They didn't really know the degree in which I was involved
Okay.
in my lifestyle. They had glimpses and they had some indications. They never knew like the scale.
Right.
Um, were they happy about me joining the military? The short answer is no,
Mm.
man. And I was 23 years old, a college graduate, and I told both my parents had that they had already separated at that point. So I told them separately. I was like, hey, I'm going to join I had done the research. I decided Green Beret, 18 X-ray, boom. I'm going to become a Green Beret in the Army. And both of them were like, my father in particular, he's like, you're not doing that. Like he was telling me I was not going to do this. And I'm like, dude, like I'm a grown man.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you for your permission. I'm
Right.
telling you what I'm going to do. He was totally against it. My mother also against it, but not quite so staunch like. And that came from a place of fear. I get it. It's early 2000s. We're surging in Iraq,
Right.
Afghanistan. It's 24-hour news cycle. They just were like, my son's going to go to war and he could die, which is true. So no, they weren't all that psyched about it. Kind of maybe the ironic or not so ironic part about that is now both of them. I mean, they're like my biggest fans. They read the books. My dad in particular, he's wearing his like special forces baseball
Nice.
cap everywhere he goes. He's
Nice.
like trying to use the language and he's messing it up because he's all into it
That's
now. But
awesome.
it wasn't
Yeah.
always that way. They were really
Yeah.
concerned. The fear was there. Once I got into it, got into the game, they were like, "Oh, this is actually kind of cool. Let's get behind this."
Yeah, and I understand that. I mean, it's got to be weird from the parents' perspective, watching your son, especially that time in our country when it was on TV all the time, and obviously your proximity to New York, being in Boston. I mean, it's a little different down here in the Nashville area. Still a big deal. I was a senior in college when the towers fell, I remember watching it, and I mean, everybody back then seemed like they were patriotic and want to go
Mm,
kick some ass. But no, I understand. I was just curious because I like to kind of ask, yeah, especially veterans, like what their family's take was on their choice to join the military. It's funny. I'll share this real quick. My dad was more upset with me becoming a police officer. He thought that was more dangerous than going into the Navy, which I always found ironic. But now with my little brother's gig, yeah, not even close. But yeah, it was kind of, I don't know, it's kind of cool. I just like to ask people what their folks thought about their
yeah, that's a good
decision to
question.
join. Well, Nick, let me ask you this because I like to ask this too. So you get into basic training, you're what, 23, 24, and you got a bunch of, younger folks, knuckleheads in there right out of high school. Was the Army what you thought it would be when you got there? Or were you really surprised? Because everybody has their own experience. So I'm curious what yours was like.
Yeah, I didn't have much of an expectation. What I love to share is that I was nervous, scared. You get on that bus, you arrive at Fort Benning, you stand in the line, the drill sergeants. Like I was a 23-year-old grown ass man with a
Mhm.
lot of aggressive life experience behind me, and yet I was still nervous. I just love
Yeah.
to share that, and that's normal. Okay, I don't care who you are, how tough you are, whatever. Like it's a daunting thing to like go into basic training. But you arrive and you go through the initial like onboard, and basic training in today's world is very different than it was 20 years ago,
But
which
yeah.
right, wrong, or indifferent. It is different. But once I kind of got past the initial, like, okay, this is what it is, which
Mhm.
takes, 2 or 3 days, it really wasn't overly like difficult. And I'm not like trying to sound arrogant. It's just this is a game that needs to be played. But I
Right.
took it seriously. I wasn't like I was blowing this off. I'm like, this is a waste of time. That's certainly some things we did I thought was like dumb and like I don't get it. But I want to be a good soldier. At that point, I
Yeah.
was like fully committed. I want to be a good
Yeah.
soldier. I want to do what I'm told. I want to execute and learn and get into the SF pipeline and go to selection and da 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 da. So I took it seriously. It was within the first like 3 days of me being there that our drill sergeants were like, you're in charge of all this. So when we get back tomorrow or whatever, like these things need to be done. I became like, there's like a term for it. I don't remember what it was. So I did have a bunch of 17, 18, 19-year-old kids that were coming straight out of high school, straight out of mom and dad's house that had no life experience at
Yeah.
all. And so I'm in this kind of like quasi leadership role to begin with. And so, yeah, maybe it was what I thought it was going to be, but also it wasn't nearly as like brutal as I kind of anticipated.
Yeah. You think sports helped you out? Like coming from a background playing sports kind of helped you with the drill sergeants and stuff?
I would say so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
I
so too.
mean, being told what to do from someone other than your parents, which I think is a great thing in life, especially for
Yeah.
young people, and to have that kind of respect for a non-guardian, a non-parent. I grew
Mhm.
up in that world by virtue of coaches. And so swap out coach, drill sergeant, cool. Someone's telling me what to do. I'm going to say yes, sir, yes, whatever, and I'm going to go execute. So yeah, I think it was helpful.
So you get to basic, and now you're obviously going on this path to SF. And where's God at this point in your life? Are you going to I don't know if you guys did chapel on Sundays. We did in OCS, and I don't know, like, where's your faith at right now? Are you thinking about that at all? Or
Not at all. Yep.
okay.
No, nope, not at all. At that point, through college and even into my initial indoctrination into the army,
Hmm.
faith play. I use I try to use this sensitively. Faith did not play a role in my deliberate consciousness of how I made decisions, what I was doing, how I was operating. I say that now knowing that God was with me throughout that. I just turned a blind eye to it and wasn't focused on that at all in that point. God showed up to me and I showed up to him and to Jesus with intentionality a little bit later into my military career. Once I got to work, once things got real, there's no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole. That's like literally what describes how I was reintroduced and then how I grew it.
That makes perfect sense. And I mean, I understand that because when I was initially in training, I wasn't focused on God either. Like, and I was raised in the church, but I just didn't put him at the forefront of, I was more focused on, hey, I'm here for me and I want to do this versus God, what do I do? What do you want from me? But, um, so what about SF, man? When you get through, when you start selection, was that a big surprise? I know you said you didn't have a whole lot of knowledge before you joined. What was that like for you?
Selection's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
selection's tough. I was highly prepared. I was highly confident. It is brutal. There are times when you do question whether you're in the right place at the right time. That little, angel and demon
Mhm.
scenario. You get put to that test again. I don't care how prepared, how tough, how fast, how strong you are. Selection or buds or a lot of these interviews to get into these organizations. That point will happen because that's a lot of the intent of putting people through that is for them to get to that decision point and decide not only how bad you still want this, but are you still willing to pay attention to detail, follow the right procedures, do the right things, execute with integrity, execute with character? Can you maintain a good teammate? Can you still be a good leader under that degree of stress? That's the entire point of selection, et cetera, regardless of the unit you're trying to get into. And so I was pushed to that limit, but I was also equally obsessed with making that vision into a reality. And so selection's hard, got through it. And then I went through this little test period that the Special Forces Command or SWIC
That's
tried,
right.
which was condensing what was a 21-day experience down into 14. And they were trying to increase the frequency of selection classes so they could pump out more Green Berets faster.
Mhm.
Like, let's just make this course 1/3 short of what
Mhm.
it was. We can add another 1 or 2 selections and get more SF guys because the demand for the ODA skyrocketed in the early 2000s. So they tried this. What they did was they took what was a 21 or 23-day experience, condensed it down to 14, but all of the tasks and standards remained the exact same. What they removed was sleep, hygiene, and food. And so they ran this experiment. I think my selection was the second 14-day one that they had tried.
Wow.
That came and no longer became a thing after I think it was about 16 months total. I think they ran like 6 or 7, maybe 8 selections with that model and realized that they were just they were breaking dudes off because the algorithm
Mhm.
of stress to rest ratio became wildly inverted. That was the experience I went through. People hear that, and everyone that went to selection will tell you that they went to the last hard selection class.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Everyone, right? It's
Yeah.
now it's easy and it's soft, and we're just creating a bunch of you save the terms. Mine statistically was a very unique type of experience, so it was particularly challenging. Obviously I made it through and I went on to the Q course.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, you get through that, you go to the Q course. Did you get the unit that you wanted? Did you get assigned to, the group that you wanted to?
I
Like, once you
did,
got
yeah. I
okay.
wanted to go to third group out of Fort Bragg. One, I was already there because that's where selection of the Q course
Mhm.
it happens. But third group was solely doing Afghanistan at the time. When Afghanistan kicked off, they had to kind of realign the areas of responsibilities for the groups because it was such a massive requirement for ODAs. And third group just did that. Now the other groups were of course sending in ODAs, but they were also doing the rest of the requirements throughout the entire operating arena outside of Afghanistan. I wanted Afghanistan. I wanted to get to where the actual fighting was happening. I wanted their group, and I got what I asked for.
So as far as, like, going through the pipeline, was that about a 2-year process before you get to a group?
Yeah,
Including
that's changed over the years as well as
Okay.
most of this stuff has. When I went through, it took about 16-ish, 17 months, the Q course was, because there was a lot of white space in between the different phases. And that's actually where a lot of guys were getting dropped from the program. It wasn't because they weren't meeting the standard during, small unit tactics or SEER school or like whatever. It was they were getting in trouble during the 3-week break that they had between phases. And they were just
Yeah.
out in downtown Fayetteville, just doing dumb shit and
Yeah.
getting dropped from the pipeline, So for me, me and the guys around that era, it was a little longer than it is today. They've really worked to kind of streamline that process a little bit. But yeah, Q course for me, 16, maybe 18 or so months.
How did you stay so dialed in and so focused while you were going through that with that downtime and stuff?
There were certainly times I kind of veered off a little bit. Nothing that cost me anything, but
Mhm.
um, again, I had some life experience. I knew what I wanted. I knew what it
Mhm.
was going to take to make it real. I'd also, in a trying to extract positive from negative, I lived in the fast lane for a
Mhm.
while, like in an extreme version of that with all the vices and all the things. Like I lived that for a while. In fact, I came into the army to get away from that. So, not everyone lives that way. So when you're finally kind of off on your own and you got a little bit of cash and you got 3 weeks of, quote unquote downtime, and you've got all of the vices around Fayetteville, North Carolina, also around a lot of military bases, it consumes you, and it's fun
Yeah.
and it's exciting. And like that is a slippery slope. For me, it was like, I don't want that. Now, were there times I went out and kind of experienced life socially? Of course. But yeah, man, I was good. And I think that I can look back and realize that it was because of the way I had lived prior to that. I kind of had filled that cup enough where I wasn't really interested in it.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's you get to third group and you get deployed to Afghanistan, right?
Yep.
How soon did that process take? Once you got through the Q course, you get to third group. Was it a pretty quick time frame when you actually got deployed, or did you have to do like a long workup before you actually got to go?
No, it was pretty quick, man. I think by the time I signed in, and then went over on my first trip was maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6 months
Okay,
ish.
that is quick. Yeah.
Pretty quick turnaround. Just enough time to kind of get integrated a
Hmm.
little bit. I was an 18 Bravo, so we're the weapons guys.
Hmm.
Where's the arms room? You learn all the different systems and optics and lasers and all this other shit that we had that I knew nothing about coming out of the Q course. It was like really when you start to learn how to do your job
Yeah.
is when you get to the ODA. Like the Q course gives you just like a basic foundation to kind of go off of. You learn the job with the team, and that's
Hmm.
really how it's done. So I feel like I had enough time to kind of get my basics together and my bearings straight. And then, yeah, I was in Afghanistan for my first pump.
What was that like being the new guy on the team? Were you kind of welcomed with open arms, or were you tested right away to see if you were gonna be able to hang with the big dogs? Like, how'd that work?
This is a great question. I went to a very unique ODA as my first ODA. They go by different terms. Sometimes we call them rat teams, but they really focused on what we call preparation of the environment. Is like the cliche term for that. So not your standard ODA that at the time in third group, most were doing just like direct action and counterterrorism.
Hmm.
The team I went to at first was focused on PE. And usually those teams are the more senior dudes around the company, the battalion, the group that have already done the regular ODA thing for 3, 4, or so 5 or so years. And they either want to go do that kind of work or it just is a natural evolution because it's a good fit and they move over there and they start doing that. So it was a unique place for a new guy to go, especially one that doesn't exactly blend in like me. Even like two-legged Nick didn't
Yeah.
really blend into most environments. So it was kind of odd, but it was based on the time that I got there and our battalion was on the process of coming back and my command team wanted to get me forward
Mm.
ASAP. So they put me on that team based largely on the timing of me showing up. And so I share that because I didn't really know what to expect.
Mhm.
I kind of had this idea of it being all like cool guy gunfights and, combat roles and jumping out of plane, like sliding down ropes, like whatever, all the sexy movie shit, which it isn't like that all the time anyway, no matter what team you're on. There's plenty of
Right.
other things that we do.
Right.
But based on the team that I went to, I got just this crazy full spectrum vantage point as my first time actually working on how an ODA can be deployed. Because we did do the armored trucks with the 50 cals and we did the half infills on Blackhawks and we did the more aggressive work, but we also did a lot of the lower vis type stuff as well. And so my first experience on a team was seeing like the full breadth, or at least a good vantage point of the breadth of what an ODA can do. Meaning like you're going to go into an embassy environment and you're going to talk to the Department of State or you're going to talk to members of the intelligence community and you're going to be wearing like a suit and tie.
Hmm.
And then the next day you're going to be in multicams loading up a 50 cal and like driving on target. And so
Yeah.
it was really unique for me. I wasn't expecting any of that at all. And I would spend 9 months, which was the duration of my first trip, just drinking from a fire hose, man.
That's pretty cool though. You got to experience all that. It's a pretty neat perspective.
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah, I was fortunate. It was a lot to try to take in,
I bet.
which
Yeah.
is why they typically reserve that for some of the more senior dudes
Hmm.
that have already experienced kind of your typical ODA stuff. Although typical ODA stuff, I don't even know like what that even means. But yeah, it was a unique, great vantage point. It was really hard, but it was beneficial.
So did you feel like at that point in your life that Nick kind of finally found his purpose, like where you're supposed to be, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing?
Yeah, man, for the first time ever. Um,
Nice.
again, up to this point, this was going to be a very short stint, a
Mm-hmm.
5-year contract. I think it was my first one.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like 2 years into it when I was in Afghanistan. And I was there maybe 60 days. And I was like, this is all I want to do. This is
Yeah.
it. I have found my passion. I have found a sense of purpose. I am starting to root myself into identity. And I fell in love with the business. I reenlisted right there and then, way ahead of the schedule that I needed to. And it was right there that I realized it was going to be not only a profession for me, but a lifestyle.
It's cool to hear that. It's cool to hear that you got to that point where you finally realized, okay, this is what I want to do, and this is where I'm supposed to be. It's a cool perspective. All right, let me ask you this again though. What about faith at this point? Is that in the picture yet, or is it still kind of getting closer to that? Where are we at with that right
Yeah,
now?
my first trip is where it finally showed up again in a more conscious
Mm-hmm.
kind of level, not in the form of disciplined practice, not so much in the form of religion,
Mm-hmm.
but in the form of spirituality and faith. My
Right.
belief in knowing that there is a God
Yeah.
was where it landed. It's hard for me to even say that it was really rooted in Christianity because I hadn't taken the steps to like learn about the Holy Trinity and Jesus and how it fits into this equation. It was basically just, I know there's a God. I'm communicating with it or him or whatever term I was using to try to describe that. And I'm asking for guidance. I'm receiving guidance. I'm receiving strength. That's where it began for me on that first deployment. Christianity and the presence of Jesus in my life really didn't show up for probably another year or two. And that's when I was getting more and more into learning about religion and faith. And because I wanted to amplify the effects that it was already having on me.
Well, but to your point, I mean, I think a lot of people, even with a foundation in church and biblical knowledge, they don't even have the relationship like you just described when you were just talking to God and you knew God was directing you. Like they have maybe the book knowledge, for lack of better words, but they don't have that real relationship. So I think it kind of gets watered down. Sometimes people think you've got to have like the credentials to have a
Mm.
relationship with God. And I try to tell people, He's everywhere. He wants you to talk to him. You don't have to be, in a ritualistic environment or on church every Sunday. Yeah, church is important, obviously, but you can have that relationship with him wherever you are. And it took me a long time to understand that concept, but you dialed that in quick, man. And for you to share that, I think you already had it. Just obviously, the more we know about Scripture, and then we really understand the Holy Trinity, it develops that relationship even further. But just the fact that you had it there, I mean, that says a lot.
That's interesting, man. You're pushing me right now to think and reflect, which I fucking love. Because you're right. I think my introduction to it was very structured and very religious based and had these systems and processes and routines and things that you did, da da da.
Hmm.
And then I went away, and that's not how I got reintegrated. In fact, I got reintegrated kind of from the other, I don't know if it's the side of the spectrum, but it was more relationship based versus practice based. And then I ended up coming full circle where then I wanted to learn and get into a system and having it ingrained in decisions I made and in daily choices that I did. That's going to church, reading the Bible, praying, etc. These kinds of like tasks that you can do to increase the relationship. Mine was structure, hate it, I want to go away. Ooh, there's a relationship here that I need to work on. And I'm just going to kind of keep it fluid without any system, without any structure to it at all, without any religious practice. And then that came after to, I think, kind of amplify it.
Well, and the reason that I say that too, I kind of experienced the same thing growing up. We were at church every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, every Wednesday night. It was the Church of Christ, which I'm not knocking it, but it was a very legalistic type upbringing. And it made me, when I got into my 20s, kind of go hard left and say, okay, God, what have you done for me? I've done all this for you. And I was bitter. I was prideful, and I was, just foolish. And so it took me having to go through trials and tribulations to finally understand, hey, God never left you, man. He's always there. You just gotta go to him. But it took a lot of growth on my part. And so I try to share that. And I'm glad you're sharing this, Nick, because a lot of people that already know who you are, I think need to hear this because they may not go to a church. They might think church is not for me. I'm not worthy of Jesus. And my goal, I feel convicted to spread the gospel in a way that will reach people that maybe wouldn't want to listen to a preacher or a pastor or
Sure.
go to a church building, and that's what I love about men like you that'll come on here and talk about the Lord, because it shows you don't have to have that stereotypical church vibe or, whatever background to be a follower of Jesus. And I think that's really important.
So true, brother. In fact, I'll layer on kind of another component to that, which is obviously right in your wheelhouse, and that is mental health as well. I do think, when you come from these kinds of communities, sitting in an office talking to someone with a wall full of degrees, and they may be speaking absolute gold, whether that's a certified PhD psychiatrist, or on more of the spirituality faith side, a fully ordained, all of the things from a preacher, a pastor, a priest, choose your individual. And when it is represented from someone that comes from that same environment, specifically because they're not that. I'm not discrediting the importance of having pastors and preachers and priests and professional doctors and therapists. Like, those are great resources. But I think for that message to connect with them, it has to come from a source other than that. And then to amplify it, ideally someone that has lived a similar lifestyle to them, that can get it, that they understand to a
Mhm.
degree what this is like. And so I think that shows up in the form of spirituality and faith, Christianity, but also mental health, particularly. And one of the things that I love to be able to talk about is that, where it's,
Mhm.
listen, like, you see me, and I say this as humbly as I can, Steve, but you see me as this like ultra, badass, like whatever. And I'd push back against that, pretty aggressively. But okay, great. Like, let's just run with that. Fine. Take that for the way you believe it to be true. Mental health is a struggle and is a challenge. It
Yeah.
takes a real tough individual to be able to recognize that there is a threshold. And if you cross that, the same mentality that made you great at what you did, meaning I'm just going to keep putting one foot in front of the other no matter what, can oftentimes lead to your demise. So it's guys like you, because you live it, you've lived it, and maybe even because you can speak the language and you can represent these kinds of communities, because you're also not that stereotypical resource to some and to many, that allows you to connect with them and impact them.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I think the way I see it too is, we all have a testimony. And I think the enemy wants us to stay quiet. And with us sharing our testimony for years. So here's a good example. I was a police officer in the town that I live in currently. I own a business in the same town. And not until I got sober, which is almost 5 years ago, did my clients know I was ever a cop. Because I went out of that profession in a very bad way. It was public, it was all over the news, and I was ashamed of it, and I didn't want to talk about it. And so as I started healing and getting back into the Lord and being sober, I realized, you know what? Yeah, I did some horrible things, but I'm not my past. Like, I've learned from that. And so now, and don't get me wrong, it's still like, I was on a podcast last week up in Jersey, and I shared a lot of my story I haven't really done yet. And it was weird, man. It's weird, like telling the dark past and the secrets. But I know that's my way of relating to people. Like, hey, yeah, I was a turd back in the day, but now I have taken the time to put the work in and realize the importance of mental health and the emotional health too. Where if I impact one person, then I feel like I'm doing my job,
Yeah.
you know?
Well said, man. Well,
Thank you.
but you're doing it, bro. You're doing
Thank
it.
you.
That's my
Thank
point,
you.
man. It's important.
Yeah, and I think that, I think more people just need to understand the importance of it. And also too, like, don't wait till it's too late. Like, some people, like, I really had to hit rock bottom before I got serious. And I'm grateful for everything. I'm grateful for the lessons and where I'm at. But I think there are some people out there, men and women alike, that are maybe on a point where they could stop and say, hey, maybe I do need to analyze, why do I do these things? Why do I self-sabotage? Why am I putting myself above my wife or my kids, or whatever it might be? And so I think that's where you raise the awareness and share experiences, and people say, hey, you know what? That guy's like me. I understand that. I've been through that. Um, just my take on it. But yeah.
Dude, I'll close out the thought, man. One of my current life's mission, in business and in life, is to help enable, organizations and individuals to recognize the capacity and capability that they currently have within them without it requiring hitting rock bottom to recognize what you're capable of. That's easier said than done.
Yeah.
It's such a common cliche story of, no, I had to hit rock bottom with my back truly against the wall with no other real option other than like death for me to tap into what I was already capable of prior to hitting rock bottom. That's the hard reality. Oftentimes it does take that point. You know, for you, an example for me would be losing my leg. People are like, how did you do this? How'd you do that? Like the discipline and the work ethic and the consistency. And it's like, for me, it took that point. I had to get my leg ripped off by a machine gun, decide I was going to go back to a Green Beret on an ODA in combat, and molded those two things together to tap into a whole nother level of productivity, work ethic, consistency, sacrifice, etc. But the frustrating part is that I was able to do all of that already. It just took this as kind of that catalyst, that kind of wake up for me to tap into it. And so again, man, it is of course easier said than done, but what I love is when you start to see those light bulbs go off in people's eyes and their hearts and their souls, like, you know what? Yeah, like I can be more, I can do more. It is doable before it having to get to a point where the wheels are almost falling off or they've already fallen off.
That's good. I mean, that's awesome. And I think that's definitely, if you can get that formula down, that's going to help a lot of people and save them a lot of headache and, you know, for lack of better words, collateral damage, especially when it comes to being a man that's married and has a family. If they can kind of catch that before they get to that rock bottom point and maybe not impact their children or their spouse or whoever, you know, in a negative way. That's awesome that you're doing that, man. That's incredible.
Man. Thank you.
I want to ask you this because you just kind of opened the door, and I know you've shared this story a lot, and I don't expect you to go through the whole thing, but I have a couple questions about the insider attack. If you're cool with me asking you a few questions about that.
Yeah.
So when you lost your leg, and you can walk us through however much you feel comfortable. I've read your story. I've seen the photos. I've seen you on podcasts. Where was your mental health, man? Like, where was your faith when you're in the moments of that attack and you're there, you know, and then you're being transported, you went to Ramstein, right? And then came over to Walter Reed. Am I getting that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when you're laying in the hospital at Walter Reed, like how in the world, man, did you maintain any kind of, like mental wellness, for lack of better words, going through that kind of process?
Yeah, man. I'd say, laying on the battlefield, bleeding out, right leg basically vaporized, femoral artery severed, leg shattered, a bunch of other injuries I was dealing with in a full blown, you know, gunfight, ambush, 12 U.S. casualties, 3 of which were killed. So it's a real bad day at the office. And, you know, according to medical science, I should have died that day, outside of just the traumatic injury at the point in time. But there was a whole host of complications that I went through during my extraction, eventually arriving at Walter Reed. But in that moment, laying there, knowing that I was going to die, there was no question in my mind. Like, this is it. You don't survive this kind of femoral bleed. And where it was located, and a seemingly an inability to stop the hemorrhaging, this is it. And that's a unique emotional roller coaster ride to go on. But as I look back on my faith and my relationship with God, this was my 3rd trip in Afghanistan where this happened. I think I'm 90+% certain, because a lot of my memories are kind of a little fuzzy around that time period, but I think that's when Jesus showed up to me for the first time. God had already been there. We were having conversations. We were working as a team. On the battlefield was the first time that I can recall Jesus specifically. And the vision, it's still crystal clear. Like,
Wow.
Literally came into my soul, grabbed me by the sides of my face, like by my ears, looked me dead in my eyes, and just simply said the 2 words, "Not yet."
Wow.
That is what I heard on the battlefield.
Wow.
And the translation to that for me is like, nah, dude, like now ain't it, because you got some things that you need to do. In fact, I have some things that I need you to do, and we're about to get to work for real. That's what that's what
This
that
gave me
translated to
goosebumps,
for
man.
me.
Yeah.
So that's where it began.
Yeah.
With the faith journey post-injury was literally on the spot within the first 3 minutes of impact. Boom, that happens. And then that it didn't stay with me that viscerally throughout my entire extraction. But certainly in the early phases of Walter Reed, when I got there, straight into the intensive care unit, I was battling all the infection. My mother, father, youngest sister, they were there. They were told, like, this is literally minute to minute. He's probably not going to make it. I was in full-blown septic shock, multi-system shutdown. So they were preparing for the worst.
Yeah.
That point in time is real hazy, real fuzzy. But the glimpses that I can recall now talking to you today, man, is like God was right there. Jesus was right there with me. And we were talking, we were having conversations, and it was a lot of, hey, do you think I'm going to be able to make it through this? And it was, yeah, you are. And it's going to be really hard, and you're going to go through a lot of pain and a lot of suffering and a lot of struggle, but I'm right beside you. But I need you to want it as bad as I need you to be able to do it. And so it was a team effort. And that stayed with me not only throughout my entire time at Walter Reed, but also once I got into recovery, prosthetic, living life upright, all the failures and frustrations and setbacks. Like, I was already relatively driven, dedicated, capable, Green Beret, doing things, and that's great, and strong and fast and MMA. Okay, got it. Like, check all those boxes. But I had a whole new arsenal of capability that I didn't realize was there. And that came by virtue of Jesus into my world.
That is so powerful, man. That is so powerful. And I think that's a testimony itself that just needs to be shared to show the power of Christ. And, he obviously is working through you and had a lot more in store for you. And I like how you put it when you said, you're going to have to go through this. You're going to have to go through this pain and go through this suffering, but I'm not done with you yet, but you got to want it. That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I'm not here to do it for you.
Right.
I can provide guidance. Maybe more importantly, I can continue to provide opportunities for you to struggle, because in order to do what we need to be done, you need to be strong and capable and resilient. And that shows up in the form of discomfort, challenges, setbacks, failures. Like, you pray for strength, God's going to give you opportunities to develop strength. And that has to hurt a little bit. It has to sting. No one has ever gotten physically stronger in the gym by remaining in a place of comfort. It doesn't exist. It's impossible. Anatomically, it's impossible. You have to go through struggle and pain and these different things. I understand it, why when it comes to prayer and faith, how one could ask for almost the exact same outcome in physical form or otherwise, and think that it's just going to be this like hocus pocus, boom, there you go.
Yeah.
Like, there's the visible abs, there's the 7,000 pound deadlift. Like,
Yeah.
you pray for the thing, you're going to find opportunities to earn your ability to do that. But that doesn't happen without you.
No, and I think people forget that, Christ suffered. I mean, he was a man when he carried that cross, and when he was crucified, he was a man. He was God in human form. And I think they think, oh, I'm going to become a Christian now, life's just going to be smooth sailing. No, you're still going to have to work. You're still going to put the effort in, and he's there with you. But like you're describing, I mean, you still got to endure and persevere and push and go forward no matter what. Well, the thing that I wanted you to cover too, man, and I know a lot of people probably don't know a lot about Army dive school. I don't think it gets a lot of coverage, at least from my perspective. Obviously, Buds is everywhere. There's all the movies and all that. But the fact that you go from the point that you're just describing, you know, being in Walter Reed, almost dying, not knowing what's going to happen, and then you get back to active duty status. And whoever's watching right now, you need to buy his book and read Nick's story. I mean, it's incredible. Man, like, walk us through that real quick, like getting back to active duty status and then going to Army dive school, which I don't know if this is accurate. I asked Chris Lee this when he was on the show, but from what I've been told, that's the hardest school in SF is the dive school. I'll get your take on it. I know what you're going to probably say, but
yeah. So the window of time in which you just described covers about 8 years.
Yeah, I knew it was a long period
about
of time.
7 years. So I was wounded in 13. within almost exactly 2 years, I was back on the ODA and back in Afghanistan and back in combat, which is a real quick turnaround. I still had a lot
Yeah,
to
it is.
figure out
That's unreal.
as a one-legged
Yeah.
dude, so I continued
Yeah.
to deploy year after year on the ODA, in different environments as an amputee. And I mentioned earlier, I transitioned to warrant officer, which I did. And it was maybe a week or two before we graduated. I was at Fort Bragg. The warrant officer course for SF is at Bragg. All of the rest of the warrant officers go to Fort Rucker. We go to a different school because it's a whole
Oh,
different
yeah,
thing
yeah,
for
yeah.
us. So I'm at
Yeah.
Bragg for 5 months. I was the first amputee to ever go to the warrant officer course, which took a whole lot of paperwork and the assumptions of risk and like all this other stuff that I'd become used to at that point in my career. Because most things that I was trying to do, there had never been a one-legged guy to do it before. So I
Mhm.
became used to the whole admin process and like whatever. Got it. So I'm about to summit this mountain of 5 months of training and learning and whatever. Great. And then I get assigned my ODA and I'm told I'm going to go to 595, which is a historic ODA. If you're unfamiliar with the horse soldiers,
Mhm.
first ODA in Afghanistan, that was 595. So that's the team I'm getting assigned to go to as a warrant officer. And so immediately I know I'm going to a dive team because in SF, each team, the numbers mean something. If the team digit ends in 5, it's a dive team. So I know it's a dive team. And I'm like, okay, well, I haven't even finished summiting the mountain I'm currently about to climb. Now I already know what my next one's going to be. I got to figure out not only how to be a warrant officer actually on a team, but this whole like dive school thing.
Yeah.
And I'll summarize this as quickly as I can, man. I got to my ODA, was in a different battalion. I met with the company command team and I met with the battalion command team on two separate discussions. And they both said the same thing to me, which was no one is expecting you to go to dive school, Nick. The reason why we're putting you on this team is they're a bunch of savage animal pirates and they need strong leadership. You're the guy to help keep them somewhat corralled. And I said, hey, due respect, sir, whether I was talking to a major or lieutenant colonel, I was like, I'm going to figure out a way to go to dive school. And they're like, yeah, that's not like a thing. That one-legged guys don't go to dive school. And I'm like, listen, if it is a requirement to be on that team, which it is on a dive team, I will not be treated any differently, especially when you put me in a command position. Like that's just not going to work. So I'll take care of that. I'll figure it out. Like I'll let you know how it goes. And they were both kind of like, I guess this Nick guy is equally crazy as we kind of thought he might be because they had just met me. And so
Yeah.
long story short, I had to go through a crazy administrative process to be able to get cleared to go. I had to go through a brutal train up with my team. And then I had to pass pre-scuba, which is brutal in and of itself. And then eventually I get to dive school. This is in 2020,
Okay.
which is a 6-week program. I was hanging on by a thread the entire time. I would also argue that CDQC, the Combat Diver Qualification Course, is the most difficult school in the United States military, certainly the Army. The branches all have their equivalents. They're all relatively the same. And I can make that argument because while I've been in schools and environments where you are hungry, you go without water, without food, without shelter, without warmth. In dive school, you're going to go without something that you need more than all those things. And that's a little thing known as oxygen. And so it sucks. It pushes you to your absolute limits. It is physically challenging, but really it's more of a mental challenge than anything else. To become a combat diver requires really one thing. You have to be willing to sit at the bottom of a pool out of air and look the devil in the face or look your adversity in the face that is screaming at you to bolt to the surface and just simply say, I would rather die than quit. If you're willing to do that, you can be a combat diver. That's it, which is, of course, easier said than done. So, yeah, I managed to get into the course. I managed to pass the course. But listen, dude, I've done plenty of firsts in my career as a one-legged guy. Becoming a diver was nothing more than it being a standard to be on a team. It doesn't matter how many limbs you have. This lifestyle, this job, this profession has standards, and you either meet those standards or you don't. And it's black and white. It's not personal. This is business. Thank you for what you did. Thank you for your sacrifices. This is not the job for you, and it's time to find something else to do in life. That's it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was kind of I know it was a snapshot view of the whole school, but do you think it's kind of ironic when you first started your journey and you go in the recruiter's office and you want to be a SEAL and then all of a sudden you're going to Army dive school?
Man, I never actually thought about it. Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you ended up kind of did it anyways, but
kind of
yeah,
did it. Yeah.
yeah, man. So let's talk about kind of your current mission a little bit. I want to highlight what you're doing with machine forge and precision components. Can you kind of get into that for our audience today?
Yeah, man, it's a wild it's a wild journey. This whole thing's a wild journey. Never in a
Yeah.
million years would I thought I would have wrote a book or started a business, start multiple companies. It's and man, you live the entrepreneur life as well. It's sexy and captivating and wildly misleading when you look at Instagram and social media of how like
Yeah.
easy it is and just
Right.
start a brand and become a millionaire overnight. It's like you have to be almost out of your mind to go into the realm of entrepreneurship. It's so brutally hard. It'll just kick your ass. And I know you know this. I'm really sharing this for your viewers that some of which are maybe interested in kind of starting their own thing. I
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
say, not to try to scare people off, it is doable.
Mhm.
I don't have an MBA. Like the business terms I know, sometimes it almost bothers me that I know what these terms mean. Like you can learn this. You can do this. You can create something of your own and have that degree of autonomy and create impact and make money doing it. It is absolutely doable. Just know going in, it's brutally hard. The two primary pillars, and the organization has kind of grown almost like crazy over the last 18 or so months, but Precision Components is really where things started. Me as a one-man task force without any clue as to what I was doing. And I knew I wanted to impact people and kind of pay it forward and inspire and enable. And I just started doing, kind of keynote presentations and these little classes and stuff. And I was just in the grind. Did that for over a year, paying my own way, just trying to get in front of people to, develop a curriculum, develop the skill of public speaking and orating. And like that comes by virtue of anything else. Just got to do it and do it
Yeah.
and do it and do it. Eventually, it grows. And so Precision Components is our B2B service provider. We do keynotes, executive coaching, consulting, training workshops. And it's just surreal when I look at some of the organizations we work with. These are like Fortune 100 companies, professional sports teams. I'm like, how did any of this even happen? I don't even think I know. And so it's humbling to say the least. Machine is more of our B2B or B2C service provider, and that's comprehensive human performance and wellness.
Uh,
And that's growing like crazy. So we've got strength conditioning, coaching and programming. We've got life design and cognitive performance. We've got functional medicine and longevity. And then we've got the community component, which we call the Forge, which is really where I spend a lot of my time on that platform, providing value, answering questions, doing different courses and getting different classes. And, I think the inception of that concept largely came as the work I was doing for different organizations started to grow and grow and grow and grow. And, it's business and time is money and you got to protect your time and recognize the value of what you do and make all these really hard choices. But I started to get to a point where it was like 50, 20, 30,000 to like get me into a room
hmm.
to like impact people. All I want to do is the work. I'm fortunate to have operations people and salespeople and other key leaders in the team that really help protect me from myself because I just want to do it. They're
Yeah.
like, no, like you can only be in one place at one time. There's a lot going on here. The demand is crazy. But when I started to see those price points go crazy, I was like, man, like I need to be able to tap into a wider audience. And so I
Mhm.
got to come up with something that's affordable and scalable and easily accessible. And that was a huge driving force behind the Machine brand,
Okay.
direct to consumer, idiot proof, easy access, great user experience, great user interface. And so that's where I live digitally multiple
Mhm.
times a day.
Okay.
And then on the precision component side, myself, and we have another, I think 30 speakers or instructors that are out there doing stuff on a weekly basis.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. What about have you thought about writing another book?
It's a good question. I actually kind of have two already in the works, and
Nice.
that's not a great approach, but I love to read and I love to write. And sometimes I just kind of go with whatever I'm inspired about at that point in time.
Mhm.
But I'm kind of honing in on what I'm currently calling the Objective Secure Field Manual.
Okay.
So the current book, it's very conceptual, and then it also kind of dials into the operational level and kind of theme level is kind of how deep as it goes. I want to take all what's in that, add some new stuff, but have it be like purely tactical like almost like you get handed like a field manual for, a machine gun. It's like, this is just what you need to know right now to put this thing into action, to troubleshoot it, to be accurate, to be effective. You don't need to know who manufactured it, where the parts came from, the vision behind the concept to create the 240 Bravo a million years ago. Like, you don't need all that stuff right now. What you need to know is how to do this one thing right now and do it well. So just no fluff, no fat, very down and in. Take that concept that I have now and then like drill it in so someone can pick that thing up and then just like go straight to work.
Wow. That's really cool. What would you say, Nick, the man you are today, what would you say is your greatest accomplishment? No pressure.
Nope. It's a good one, man. My greatest accomplishment, I mean, it's in the wheelhouse of my family without question. I'm trying to decide how to zero in and answer it accurately and authentically because, becoming a dad is kind of a cliche answer. I'm not saying it's a wrong answer.
Yeah.
But if you ask the question, like, what's your greatest accomplishment? Well, like, it doesn't take much to create a kid, like a human, right? Like you could do that in like 15 seconds after like date night with your wife, hopefully, right? So like, is that really an accomplishment? Maybe I had.
It is. Come on, man.
Maybe I had a good round. Maybe I did well. You can, Tony, you could hit her up. You could ask her. She'd probably tell you. So I don't know if you could use the word accomplishment when it comes to becoming a dad or a parent, because the actual process of doing that is, Mother Nature kind of takes care of like quite a bit of that.
Right.
So I want to be more accurate.
This is not going where I thought it would, dude.
And we'll introduce a little bit of levity here into this conversation. I would say my greatest accomplishment, and I'm early in this game, my oldest just turned 9.
Nice.
My youngest just turned 5.
Okay.
Is being as present as I have been. And I haven't been perfect at that, especially those of us with ambition and are trying to juggle 15 balls at any given moment in time. It's easy to get sucked into the passion projects and the business world. And I know you know it. I know it. I have learned these lessons the hard way. But through that process, being present, being an active element of their development for mentorship, resilience, strength, guidance, seeing that starting to evolve, both my insights and personalities, my wife's, as they're taking both of those things and a bunch of other sources and they're molding into their own individual, particularly my oldest, really 9-year-old, really starts to become like his own being, his own entity. So a long-winded answer to say that I am proud that has been a high priority for me. Second only to my relationship with God and my personal wellness, which is essential for me to be the asset I need to be for them. And that took a long time for me to put that priority where it is. But to have that kind of investment in those 3 people's lives, my wife and our 2 boys, who are the absolute at the core of not only how I do what I do, but why I do what I do. And then concurrently being successful in business. One of the things that, and I get, and you hear from a lot of entrepreneurs or hyper successful business people is like, I was never at the dance recitals. I was never home for dinner. I worked 20 hours a day for 20 years straight. And that's what it took to build this $10 billion like entity. Hey, great. You know what? It probably does take a degree of that to do what you just did. What I know is, well, I'm a capitalist through and through. I'll scream it from the rooftops. Making money is a great thing. It's a great tool. It's a great resource that allows you to do a lot of great things. We do that. I do that. But it comes second to the impact and the presence that I have in the lives of my wife and my boys. And I'm good with that. I'm still going to win in business. We're going to grow and scale and make money and impact, and all that stuff is important. But it will forever become second on the priority list. That is with my family.
That's really good to hear. And one thing, Nick, I want to share with you just from the outside looking in, I like how you show the human side of yourself online, especially with your sons, and just showing, like, I've never seen you post anything in a negative way towards fathers. And I'm a father. I have a 7-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter. And some of the other people in the space online have kind of made comments like, basically in a way like a divorced guy with 2 kids could take the wrong way. Like basically, if you screw up once, there's no coming back. And I like how you show that human side of yourself, but you're really good about being positive about it and not making someone feel like shit because they're divorced or because they don't see their kids every day because they don't have full custody or whatever. So as a single parent, man, I appreciate you carrying that torch and showing how to be a present husband and a present father, but doing it in a way that doesn't make the guys that don't have that anymore like feel less than, because it's unfortunately some of that gets kicked around online, and it's kind of bothered me, man. It's bothered me to see that from people.
Yeah, man. I sincerely appreciate that. One of that's amongst the greatest compliments, I can get. And certainly coming out of the special ops world, and listen, there's a lot of knuckleheads out there and charlatans that are just, in it for themselves and pumping nonsense and embellishing this and that. And like, I get it. And I pray for them that they find peace in who they actually are and why they're doing what they're doing. And I pray that they find a sense of authentic and positive passion and purpose. I do that for those individuals. But there's a lot of, especially coming out of the special ops world, especially post GWAT, it's this like crazy, hyper aggressive, just no matter what, nonstop with the blue war paint. And you never quit, you never stop. If you break your leg halfway through, you continue the marathon. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like a good idea at all. It sounds like a horrible choice. Like, what are we talking about? So one of the things that I love is introducing kind of some of the softer skills of human performance, and not just as a talking at people, but living them. And then I think what you just said kind of speaks to that, man, where you pick up on that because it's easy to do forward facing when it's just the way that you live. Mm-hmm. And these are things like humility and compassion and empathy and patience and forgiveness. You look at a lot of special ops team guys with those terms and they're like, get that shit away from me. That's not me at all. I am full throttle, full savage, 24/7. Hey man, do you, homie? I'm not telling you how to live your life. What I'm saying is, for me, what's allowed me, in my opinion and in my faith and what I know to be true with certainty, is in my home life, as a husband, as a dad, as a soldier, as a team guy, as an entrepreneur, as a CEO, as a teammate, as a da-da-da-da-da-da, without those elements integrated into an operating system, I'm nowhere near the person I am today. I haven't done any of the things that I've done today. And so I love the chance to highlight that in a long-winded way of saying, I appreciate that feedback, man. I mean, it means a lot.
Well, and you're welcome. And you're authentic, you're leading by example, and it's encouraging seeing it from the other side. Because not getting into a long-winded discussion on this, but being divorced, co-parenting, all that stuff, man, it's not easy to navigate. And that's really where the mental health comes into play, because no matter how much you work on it, it's still a daily reminder, coming home to an empty house, or not being at your, your kid's event because it's not your weekend, or, whatever. So I think divorce is a subject that, I want to shed more light on from the male perspective, and the guys that want to be present fathers. So you're setting a good example for those of us that are still trying to be present and still trying to be, for lack of better words, a good dad when we're not available to be there full time, or all the time. So, and, I just think it's really, it's encouraging, man. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Let's lighten it up real quick as we're kind of wrapping things up. I picked on your wife a little bit when she was on, so I'm going to pick on you too. Do you have a, do you have a, like a favorite scripture or a favorite quote that you want to share with the audience?
Ooh. You won't roll your eyes at this. Some might, because it is used quite a bit, but it is one that I come back to often. It's Isaiah 6:8. I'll recite it if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And it goes, "And then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? Who will go for us? And then I said, here I am, send me."
Great verse, man. Great.
That speaks to me from a lot of different ways. Someone's got to step into the breach. Someone's got to step forward. Someone has to show up. If I highlight that with a quote, non-scripture, that was originally said by a man named Edmund Burke in the early 17th century, where he said, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And I think that pairs nicely with Isaiah 6:8, because that is true. I believe that to be true. Mm-hmm. Good people, good men, and good women, good humans in general, need to step up and step forward. Otherwise, evil wins. Period.
100%. And you're living proof of Isaiah 6:8, man. I mean, just that testimony you shared with Christ when you were on the battlefield, that is probably the most powerful testimony I've ever heard, man. That is incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I know I don't know what that's like for you to still talk about that event, but I'm grateful that you had the courage to share that and be transparent with it. Let's couple more questions for you. These are more fun. What kind of music are you into? I asked your wife and she got put on the spot. So what's you a metalhead, or what kind of music are you into?
Good question. I don't really listen to music very often. I listen to music mostly only in one arena, and that's when I'm in the gym
Okay.
or doing like physical training,
Yeah.
which is usually a daily thing or a couple times a day. I used to listen to music when I'd be driving, but that's been replaced. Originally, it was a lot of podcasts and audiobooks, which I still do. But lately, man, I'm driving in silence. I'm driving
Really?
with the windows down.
Hmm.
It's a chance for me to just like unplug
Yeah.
from any type of external stimulus, which is what music is, a form of that. A lot of it's been more silence. So I don't listen to a
Okay.
lot of music when I'm on the road.
Okay.
In the gym, however, it's usually one of two things. One is loud, angry, Five Finger Death Punch,
Nice.
metal.
Yeah.
I'll sprinkle in some like 70s and 80s rock as well. AC/DC, Metallica gets sprinkled into the playlist as well.
Mhm.
Or it's instrumentals, like what
Mm.
you'll hear in my like movie scores, movie
Okay, yeah.
soundtracks.
Yeah.
So no words, just the Rocky theme, right? Like when
Yeah.
I'm training,
Yeah.
I am
yeah.
the hero in my own movie right
Nice.
now, and I need the soundtrack to do the next thing.
Nice. Favorite movie? We're similar in age, so I'm curious what you're going to say on this, man. So,
This is tough. My favorite movie, I'll tell you, it's tough for me to pick my absolute favorite. I'm thinking about my time in college. The movie The Program was my favorite movie, like forever, it's about a college football team.
right.
And it still is great.
It's a great movie.
It's a great movie. The Program was on the list for a long time. Godfather 1 and 2 comes to mind. Scarface comes to mind pretty quickly. I'll give you 4 answers because I can't narrow it down.
No,
to
that's
one.
cool. Yeah, that's cool. I was expecting a couple other ones you haven't mentioned yet, but
I mentioned Rocky. That comes to mind too. And I
Okay,
grew up on
yeah.
that as well.
which Rocky though? Which one?
That's a good one. He obviously loses in 1, he wins in 2, but I like him losing, but him at the end of 2 screaming to Adrian.
Yeah.
I have this visual of Tony as Adrian at home,
Yeah.
pregnant or just had the kid. I forget where they were at in life. And like, it's rooted in her, like his victory was for her. There are times I'm like literally on the assault bike in my garage at 5:00 in the morning. And I like visualize that to do my last like 3 iterations of sprints when I
Nice.
feel like I'm going to die.
Yeah, nice.
It's like she's in the house asleep and it's like, Adrian, it's like, that's what I'm feeling. So that also comes to mind too.
nice. That's awesome. I figured you'd say Point Break or Roadhouse, man. I thought one of those would jump out there.
Ooh, both Swayze
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah, man.
Classic.
Yeah.
They redid Roadhouse.
Oh,
Which
it was
I-
horrible.
I don't
Horrible.
think I've seen I've
It's-
done pieces
it's-
of it. It's
It's
with
bad, dude.
what's his
Jake,
name?
Jake Gyllenhaal.
Jake
Yeah,
Gyllenhaal. Is it
yeah,
not
it's-
good?
No,
Yeah.
you can't remake Roadhouse, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's not. I mean, he's in shape and he's fighting, which is cool, but it's not the same, dude. Not the same as the original.
Okay. I'm gonna
But,
pass on it.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Well, man, as we're wrapping up, can you kind of plug your companies and let our viewers and listeners know how they can find you and learn more about you?
Yeah, I think the website for Machine is probably the way to go because that's where I
Okay.
spend a lot of my time. It's mchn.co. We're currently restructuring, repivoting a little bit here. Some new offerings. It's an exciting time, but yeah, check us out there and I'll be looking forward to working with you.
Awesome, man. How do you feel about closing us out in a prayer?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for just the opportunity to sit down with Nick and to share his testimony, Lord, and just to shed light on your gospel and your love and how much you do for us. Thank you for this platform and the ability to sit here and just share awareness for mental health and also your love and what you do in our lives, God. Thank you for Nick and Tony. I pray you bless them and just Be with them, cover them in your blood, and protect them, Lord. And I pray that whoever's listening to this today and whoever's watching knows their life has value, it has meaning, and it has purpose, and that they're here for a reason, that you love them. It's in your most heavenly name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for tuning in to the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast. Be sure to smash that bell, like and subscribe to the channel. New episodes drop every Wednesday and every Thursday. Nick, it was an absolute honor to sit down with you today, man. I really appreciate your time. I know you're super busy, and I'm very grateful.
Pleasure's mine, man. I appreciate you. I'll be looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, man. God bless and take care. I really
God
appreciate
bless.
you.